Fly on the Wall live performance. And before I forget, my thanks go to Isabel for organising this event, and in particular for organising it for today, July the 5th, in other words, one day after I was finally able to get my hair cut. Had this been done on Friday, I would have been blanking the picture out or putting a bag over my head or something. Anyway, this evening I'm going to read one of the stories from my collection, The Goddess of Macau, which is coming from Fly on the Wall next month. But before I do that, and since all the stories in the collection are set in Macau, I thought it might be helpful to say a few words about the place for those of you who may not be familiar with it. Macau is about 50 miles from Hong Kong, on the other side of the Pearl River Delta. I lived in Hong Kong from 1993 to 2010. And like many people in Hong Kong, especially many expatriates, Macau was a very popular place to get away from the big city of Hong Kong for a weekend or a night, or even just for one very long day, a morning ferry followed by a Portuguese lunch somewhere, a bit of shopping in the antique shops, and a nice dinner and a late ferry home. Macau was settled by the Portuguese in the early 1500s and was a Portuguese colony until 1999, when, like Hong Kong, it became a special administrative region of China. And in those nearly 500 years of Portuguese rule, there was enough time for the mixing of the Europeans and Chinese that led to a unique Macanese culture. But Macau has always been a city with two faces. Along with the churches and the pretty Portuguese buildings, there is also a dark side. There's gambling, prostitution, organised crime, and so on. For me, this dual nature of Macau was best captured by the Australian travel writer Colin Simpson, who visited the city in the early 1960s. He described the city as a charming watercolour with a pornographic drawing on the back. The rose wine is laced with wormwood. The ice cream sundae has been sprinkled with marijuana. Sadly, but perhaps inevitably, since the return of Macau to China, the Macanese culture is somewhat in decline. But if you do go there, you'll still find Portuguese as a language, street names spelled out in blue and white ceramic tiles, and all those churches and Portuguese buildings. And perhaps most importantly of all, plenty of restaurants specialising in Macanese food, often washed down with a red wine from the Douro or a Vino Verde. The story I'm going to read tonight is called A Short History of Chinese Tea, and was one of the first Macau stories that I wrote. I should also perhaps add, to avoid any confusion, that although, as you can see, I am very clearly a middle-aged white male, the narrator in this story is a Chinese woman, so you'll just have to use your imagination, I'm afraid. Anyway, here goes, so I hope you enjoy this story. A Short History of Chinese Tea. Today, I am meeting my husband for the first time. He is in the drawing room talking with my mother, and I can hear muffled voices as I prepare tea. I watch as the pearls unfold in the water, and a fragment of jasmine petal drifts amongst the unravelling leaves. From a neighbouring house, a radio is playing a recent hit, and I sing along quietly. I enjoy making tea, a skill I learnt from my aunt, and I take pleasure in the attention to detail that is needed. I know, for example, that for jasmine, the water should not be too hot, but instead should have crab eyes. It was my aunt who taught me how to judge the temperature of boiling water from the size of the bubbles. Shrimp eyes are coolest, and then crab eyes, fish eyes, rope of pearls, and raging torrent. I smile at the memory and wish my aunt was here to help me today. I concentrate on the tea to try and overcome my nerves. I know how important this day is, and I don't need to be told to use our finest teapot. According to family tradition, it was a gift from a court official who had been stranded in our village in bad weather. Like all the best, it is made of Yixing clay, a lustrous red-brown with no frivolous decoration or ornament, just fine calligraphy. Sitting on top of the lid is a delicately crafted turtle. The teapot is one of the few precious items that came with us when we fled to Macau after the war. Mother told me last week that a marriage had been arranged. I wasn't surprised. I'd had my suspicions for some time. Hushed conversations partly overheard behind closed doors. I don't mind. I know I could refuse if I wanted to, but I won't unless he turns out to be completely hideous. I know what's expected of me. I don't think I am vain, but I am lucky that my looks will help get the good match that's needed to restore the family to prosperity. Lam Fung, that's his name, is the son of a wealthy businessman. I just pray that he's acceptable. When the tea is ready, I place everything on a tray and carry it into the room next door. I try hard not to look directly at him and keep my head bowed as I place the tray on the rosewood side table. I turn to leave the room, but my mother asks me to stay. Lei Wai, please sit down. I do as she asks and take the chair next to her. I keep my head bowed, but I cannot resist looking aside to see the man I will spend the rest of my life with. I catch a glimpse of fine features, and I feel overwhelming relief. Lei Wai, continues my mother, this is Lam Fung. I take my mother's cue to look at him properly, and my initial impression is confirmed. He is a handsome man. I am a little tongue-tied. What do you say when introduced to your future husband? It is a pleasure to meet you, is all I can manage. The pleasure is all mine. He is gracious in response. I pour the tea and we make polite conversation. The weather is poor for the time of year, but business is good. We discuss mutual acquaintances and the latest films from Hong Kong. I'm becoming more at ease with the situation when my mother brings the conversation to an end. Lei Wai, I have matters to discuss with our guest. Would you please take the tea things away? As I get up, he also stands, and that's when I see the darkness in his eyes. I feel uneasy and I try not to look, try not to stare, try not to say anything at all. My mother brings me tea and places it by the side of my bed. She pours a cup and I lever myself up until I am partly sitting. Oolong. The tea has been well prepared and it's a good choice. I know that it will help me recover. He has only been to see me once since it happened. Even then he could barely look at me. It was as if I had let him down, as if I had betrayed him. Mother tells me that he is just upset. She says he will come round in time, that we can try again. I'd like to believe her, but I don't know. She is trying to reassure me, but I have an uneasy feeling that nothing will be the same. In the meantime, though, all I want to do is sleep. I'm so tired that I don't even dream. I prefer it that way. I wake when the maid knocks on the door. She collects the tea things before leaving silently. She doesn't want to talk to me either. I've never trusted the girl, and more than once I've seen the way he looks at her. He thinks I don't notice, but I'm not blind. The bruises are healing at least. I guess I was lucky that I didn't break anything. How did it happen anyway? As my strength slowly recovers, I've been trying to remember, but it's coming back only hazily. The only thing I know for certain is that I found myself lying at the bottom of the stairs. A sharp pain gripped my belly, and a line of blood ran down the inside of my left thigh. The maid is back with soup. She has a cold look that is at odds with her 17 years. I wish we'd never taken her in. I was too sentimental and fell for a sob story about her parents. She's useless at her job, and I've often said that we should get someone else. But he always speaks up for her. She's young, he says. Give her a chance. Oh, she's young, all right. I'm well aware of that. Lying in bed, there is little to do but listen to the noise of the street. The area is quiet, but there are still hawkers who shout their wares. I hear sounds in the house as well. Doors opening and closing, comings and goings. I hear voices too. Sometimes I think I hear the two of them talking, and I strain to make out words. My imagination fills in where my ears fail me. They say I must have slipped on the stairs, but I have no memory of how or why. I wasn't carrying anything, and there was nothing on them to make the steps slippery. How could I have fallen? Mother comes every day and makes tea. I'm touched, as I know that the tea she has brought is expensive. It has good health-giving properties, and I can feel my strength slowly returning. As my body starts to recover, my memory is slowly filling in some of the gaps. I remember that I was on the landing, talking to the maid. No, not talking, remonstrating about something. About what, I'm not sure, when she brushes past me, knocking me off balance. The tea gives me the strength I need. Pu'er has a dark maturity that matches my mood these days. My husband, on the other hand, prefers alcohol. In the past, it was just rice wine after a banquet, or a European wine if he was trying to impress buyers from Hong Kong. I don't know when it was that he started with whiskey, but now it seems to be all he drinks. I tried hiding the bottles at first, but he soon put a stop to that with his fist. Trying to be more subtle, I took to pouring whiskey down the drain when he was out. Not to empty the whole bottle, he'd be suspicious of that, but to try and reduce the amount he drank. It didn't work. He didn't say anything, but pretty soon he started locking the bottles away in his study. I don't go out much these days. He doesn't like me to, and unless I can shield my face, I don't want to anyway. I wish my mother were still alive. She'd know what to do. He's never forgiven me for not giving him a child. It doesn't seem to occur to him that I also felt the loss. The doctor said that the internal injuries were probably too bad, but also he stopped sleeping with me, so I don't know how he thought it could happen anyway. It's been years since we shared a bed. He takes his pleasures elsewhere, of course, but at least to begin with, he had the decency to be discreet about it. Now he seems to enjoy making sure that I know who he's seeing. Once, when I was laid up in bed with flu, he even brought someone home. I think he did that on purpose. Perhaps it gave him a thrill. Sometimes I think I should never have kicked out the maid. At least then I could have kept the shame within the house. I made sure that every maid we had after her was older than me, something else he has never forgiven me for. The tea is dark and earthy. There is a complexity in the taste that I would never have enjoyed when I was young. Perhaps I was always destined to have this tea shop, even if it took a long time to get here. The irony is that I probably wouldn't have it if it hadn't been for his drinking. It was liver failure, apparently. I can't exactly say I was sad, even if there was a small part of me that wondered what might have been, if things had turned out the way my younger self thought they would. Of course, even at the end, he had a final joke at my expense. Where I thought there would be money to live comfortably, instead there were debts. When everything was finished, there was just enough left to buy the tea shop. A love of tea seems to run in the family, and I remember the lessons that my aunt taught me. I have found my vocation at last, and I get to drink all sorts of different teas. Creamy white peony, delicate silver needle, fresh dragonwell. I still drink simple jasmine, and I don't mind being reminded of my naive younger self. I've forgiven her now, but as I get older, I more and more return to oolong in a bid to keep both my cholesterol and blood pressure low. So much more pleasurable than the pills the doctor gives me. And what am I drinking today? Nanjing rainflower tea. It comes from the hills around our ancestral village, and I can't drink it without thinking of my aunt. I make sure that I prepare it properly. Shrimp eyes, always shrimp eyes, she tells me. Thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed that. And just a reminder, in case you hadn't noticed, that The Goddess of Macau comes out with Fly on the Wall Press next month. And well, I hope you enjoyed that very much. I enjoyed reading it, and I hope you found it interesting and perhaps may inspire anybody to explore more about Macau. And if you are on Twitter at all, there's a wonderful Twitter account called something like Old Macau Photographs. It's obviously always fascinating. Anyway, thank you very much for listening. Thank you once again to Isabel. And I'm now going to click this magic red button that says End Live Video.